Sister scheduled a fake anniversary party on my wedding day and my parents chose to attend it until my grandfather threatened to cut them out of his will. My sister, 28F, and I, 26F, have always had a strained relationship. Our parents have consistently favored her since we were kids. She got the bigger bedroom, newer clothes, and more attention at every milestone. I learned to live with it, focusing on building my own life instead of competing for their approval. My fiancé proposed last January, and we set our wedding date for June 15th this year. We sent save the dates in August and formal invitations in February. Everyone in the family RSVP'd, including my parents and sister. We put down non-refundable deposits for the venue, catering, photographer, DJ, and flowers. Everything was set. Last month, out of nowhere, my sister announced she was planning a second anniversary party on June 15th. I was confused since her wedding anniversary is in August. When I called to ask about the conflict with my wedding date, I expected an apology for the mix-up. Instead, she snapped at me saying, "Well, it's not like it's a big deal. You can just move your date." I was stunned. I calmly explained that we had already paid thousands in deposits and sent invitations months ago. All our vendors were booked, and changing the date would mean losing all that money, not to mention the chaos of trying to reschedule everything with just weeks to go. She responded by hanging up on me. I thought surely my parents would see how ridiculous this was, so I called them expecting support. Instead, my mom immediately sided with my sister, saying, "It's just one day for you, but this is an important milestone for Olivia." When I pointed out it wasn't even her real anniversary date, my dad jumped in and said my sister's celebrations take priority because she puts effort into maintaining relationships, implying I don't. The conversation got worse from there. They confirmed they were planning to attend her fake anniversary party instead of my wedding. My dad said he had already told Olivia they would be there, and it would be unfair to change plans now, completely ignoring that they had RSVP'd to my wedding months ago. I hung up the phone in tears and couldn't believe what was happening. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how my own parents were choosing to skip my wedding for a party that didn't even need to happen on that specific day. My fiancé suggested I talk to someone else in the family who might be able to reason with them. I called my grandpa Earl, 75M, the next morning. He's always been supportive of me, even while dealing with his own health issues. He had a heart attack last year and has been careful about travel, but had already confirmed he would attend our wedding despite it being a 3-hour drive from his home. When I told Grandpa Earl what happened, he was furious. He couldn't understand why my sister would schedule her party on my wedding day or why my parents would choose to attend it instead. He promised he would be at my wedding no matter what and said he would talk to my parents about their decision. During our conversation, he mentioned something I never knew. He had accumulated significant wealth over the years from smart investments and property holdings. He told me he was planning to leave substantial inheritances to my parents, sister and me. He was so disgusted by their behavior that he said he might reconsider his will. I told him that wasn't necessary and that I was just grateful for his support. 4 days after my conversation with Grandpa Earl, I received a call from my mother. Her tone was completely different from our previous conversation. She said they had reconsidered and would be attending my wedding after all. She made it sound like they were doing me a huge favor, saying, "Family should stick together for important events." There was no apology for their previous decision or acknowledgement of how hurtful it had been. Later that same day, my sister called to say she was postponing her anniversary party. She claimed it was because some friends couldn't make it, not because it conflicted with my wedding. Again, no apology, no admission that scheduling a fake anniversary party on my wedding day was inappropriate. Neither of them mentioned anything about Grandpa Earl or any inheritance. Something felt off about their sudden change of heart. The next time I spoke with Grandpa Earl, I asked if he had said anything to them. He admitted he had called my father and mentioned he was reconsidering his will after hearing how they treated me. That's when everything clicked. They only changed their minds about attending my wedding because they were worried about losing their inheritance, not because they actually cared about me or realized they were wrong. I was beyond hurt. I spent the night talking it over with my fiancé, who was equally disgusted by their behavior. The next morning, I called my parents and told them not to bother coming to the wedding since I knew their sudden change of heart was only about money. My dad immediately accused me of being dramatic, while my mom started crying. She claimed I was misinterpreting their intentions and that they always planned to attend my wedding, despite explicitly telling me otherwise just days earlier. My sister sent me a text saying, "You've always been jealous of me. Stop being such a worthless burden to everyone who has to deal with your pathetic insecurities." This was the final straw. I blocked her number immediately. Within hours, extended family members started messaging me. It became clear that my parents were telling everyone I'd banned them from my wedding out of spite and jealousy without explaining the full story. My fiancé supports whatever decision I make, but with all the family pressure, I'm starting to doubt myself. Part of me wants to just let them come to avoid more drama, but another part feels like I'd be letting them walk all over me again. They've shown they only care about the money, not about being there for me on one of the most important days of my life. Ida for refusing to let my family attend my wedding after finding out they only changed their minds because of potential inheritance issues? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my original post, and I want to thank everyone for their comments and support. I need to address some misunderstandings I've seen in the comments. No, I don't want my grandfather's money. I never even knew he had significant savings until this situation happened. I have a good job and my fiancé also has a better job. We're financially stable on our own. For those asking why my sister would deliberately schedule her party on my wedding day, honestly, this kind of thing has happened before. She scheduled her college graduation party on my birthday, planned a family trip during my high school graduation week, and announced her engagement at my engagement party. My parents always made excuses for her behavior, saying she was excited or didn't realize the conflict, but this wedding situation was the most blatant example yet. After posting here, the situation got even worse. My family bombarded me with messages and calls. My mother called crying every day, sometimes multiple times. She would start the conversation normally, then break down sobbing about how I was breaking her heart. These calls would last for hours if I didn't find an excuse to hang up. My sister sent increasingly hostile texts. I was shocked at how nasty she was being and couldn't understand why she was so angry when she was the one who tried to sabotage my wedding. Even my future mother-in-law, who had previously stayed out of family drama, received calls from my mother trying to get her to talk some sense into me. Thankfully, my fiancé's family has been incredibly supportive and didn't pressure me either way. The stress was taking a physical toll. I wasn't sleeping, couldn't focus at work, and started having anxiety attacks whenever my phone rang. My boss noticed my performance slipping and called me into his office to ask if everything was okay. I had to explain that I was dealing with family issues related to my upcoming wedding. He was sympathetic but reminded me that I needed to keep up with my workload. After a particularly bad night where I couldn't sleep at all, my fiancé found me crying in the bathroom at 3 a.m. He suggested that maybe letting them attend the wedding would at least stop the harassment, and we could keep our distance from them during the event. As much as I hated to admit it, he had a point. The wedding was less than a week away, and I couldn't handle the stress anymore. So, against my better judgment, I called my parents the next day and told them they could attend the wedding. I made it clear that this didn't mean I was okay with how they had treated me, but that I wanted the harassment to stop and was hoping we could at least keep things civil for one day. When I called to tell them, my mother immediately stopped crying and said, "Well, I'm glad you finally came to your senses." My father simply said, "Good. That's what families do." My sister didn't even bother to respond to my text letting her know she could attend. It was like they felt entitled to be there all along, despite initially choosing to skip it. I spent the days leading up to the wedding focusing on last-minute details and trying to prepare myself mentally for seeing my family. My bridesmaids, who knew the situation, promised to run interference if things got tense. My maid of honor even created a signal we could use if I needed rescue from a conversation with my family. On the wedding day itself, I woke up with a mixture of excitement about marrying the love of my life and dread about facing my family. My bridesmaids arrived early to help with hair and makeup, bringing champagne and breakfast to start the day on a positive note. They kept me laughing and distracted as we got ready. My mother arrived at the bridal suite just as we were finishing makeup. She immediately started criticizing the hairstylist's work and suggested I should have chosen a different style. My maid of honor smoothly intervened, saying the photographer wanted to take some pre-ceremony shots of just me and the bridesmaids, effectively ushering my mother out of the room. The ceremony itself was beautiful despite the tension. I focused on my fiancé's face as I walked down the aisle, barely registering my father beside me. We had decided to have him walk me down the aisle to avoid creating more drama, but we didn't include the traditional "who gives this woman" part in the ceremony. Grandpa Earl sat in the front row, having insisted on coming despite his doctor strongly advising against travel due to his heart condition. Seeing him there, smiling proudly, helped me get through the ceremony without thinking about my parents' and sister's true motivations for attending. At the reception, I couldn't help but notice my parents and sister hovering around Grandpa Earl whenever he was alone. They kept bringing him drinks, showing him photos on their phones, and being uncharacteristically attentive while barely acknowledging me except when other guests were watching. It was so obvious what they were doing that several guests commented on it to me later. My father made a brief toast that focused more on family unity and forgiveness than on celebrating our marriage. It felt like a public relations move rather than a genuine expression of happiness for us. My sister sat at her table looking bored and checking her phone throughout the speeches. I spent the evening focusing on my new husband, our friends, and Grandpa Earl. Whenever possible, I sat with my grandfather, who told stories about his youth and gave marriage advice that made us laugh and tear up. Those moments were the highlight of my reception. He stayed longer than expected despite his health concerns, saying he wouldn't miss celebrating with his favorite granddaughter for anything in the world. We left for our honeymoon the next day, a 2-week trip to Hawaii that we had been planning and saving for since our engagement. Being away from all the family drama was exactly what we needed. A week after returning from our honeymoon, my mother called to check in. After brief small talk about the wedding and honeymoon, she got to the real reason for her call. Your grandfather seemed a bit cold toward us at the wedding. I was wondering if you could talk to him. Put in a good word for us. I decided to be direct. Are you asking me to convince Grandpa Earl not to cut you out of his will? She paused before saying, well, we did come to your wedding like you wanted. I think you owe us that much. I reminded her they only attended to protect their inheritance after initially choosing my sister's fake anniversary party. I told her I wasn't going to help them manipulate my grandfather. She hung up without responding. My father called next, immediately aggressive. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By turning your grandfather against us? When I pointed out their lifelong favoritism of my sister, he exploded and cut the call. My sister's text was simple: you're a selfish bitch. If we lose our inheritance because of you, you'll regret it. I blocked all their numbers after that. I had unblocked my sister few days before the wedding. My husband has been incredibly supportive, reminding me that I don't owe them anything after how they've treated me. We agreed to take some time to process everything before deciding on next steps regarding my family. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update. Several commenters asked why I hadn't cut contact with my family sooner. The truth is I kept hoping things would improve, that they'd realize how they were treating me. It's harder to let go of family than you might think, even when they consistently hurt you. There were good moments mixed in with the bad over the years, and those memories made it difficult to make a clean break. After blocking their numbers, my family found other ways to contact me. My mother started emailing me daily, alternating between guilt trips and angry accusations. My father called my workplace 3 times before my boss told the receptionist not to put his calls through anymore. He showed up at our apartment one evening when we were out, leaving a note demanding I call him about important family business. My sister took to social media, posting vague but obvious references to me being ungrateful and manipulative. She even reached out to mutual friends, telling them I was having mental health issues and needed intervention. Thankfully, these friends knew me well enough to check with me directly rather than believing her. They started calling my husband when they couldn't reach me. At first, he tried to be polite, saying I needed space and would contact them when I was ready. Eventually, he had to block their numbers too after my father called him at work and my sister sent him threatening texts. They even contacted my friends from college and high school, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in years. These friends forwarded me confused messages asking what was going on and if I was okay. It was embarrassing having to explain the situation to people who weren't close to me anymore. My parents showed up at our apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning. We were home but didn't answer the door. They stood in the hallway knocking for nearly 20 minutes before leaving. Our neighbors later asked if everything was okay, saying they'd overheard my parents claiming they were worried about my mental state and might need to call the police for a wellness check. They suddenly seemed desperate to talk to me, ironic given how little they cared about my wedding initially. Their behavior only confirmed I had made the right decision in cutting contact. During this time, Grandpa Earl called to check on me. We had a long talk about everything that had happened. He told me something that shed more light on the situation. My parents and sister had arranged a meeting with him after the wedding. He thought they were going to apologize for their behavior, but instead, they spent the entire hour asking about his will and financial planning. They didn't even try to hide what they were after, he said. Your father asked specifically about the inheritance allocations, and your sister wanted to know if I had considered setting up a trust for her children if she has any in the future. Your mother brought up her plans to renovate their house, hinting that an advance on the inheritance would be helpful. What disgusting, pathetic people, Grandpa Earl said during our call. He was so upset by their behavior that he decided to change his will, cutting them out entirely and redirecting their portion to me. I told him I wasn't comfortable with this and that he shouldn't make such a big decision because of this situation, but he insisted it was his decision alone. I've been watching how they've treated you for years, he said. This wedding business was just the final straw. You're the only one who visits me without wanting something in return. The others only call when they need money or think I might be updating my will. I asked him not to tell them about his decision yet, hoping to avoid more drama. He agreed but said he was moving forward with the changes regardless. 2 days after this conversation, my mother sent me an email with the subject line, "We know what you did." The body of the email accused me of manipulating Grandpa Earl against them and threatened legal action if I didn't fix the situation. Somehow, they had found out about Grandpa Earl's decision despite his promise not to tell them. When I called Grandpa Earl to ask what happened, he explained that his lawyer had contacted him with questions about the will changes, and his assistant had accidentally called my parents' home phone instead of his cell phone to confirm the appointment. During that call, enough information was shared that my parents figured out what was happening. The harassment intensified after that, accusing me of manipulating Grandpa Earl. My mother sent emails claiming I had poisoned my grandfather's mind against them. My sister posted on social media calling me a gold-digging snake who stabbed her own family in the back for money. I called Grandpa Earl to warn him about what they were saying, but he laughed it off. "They can say whatever they want," he said. "I know the truth, and so do you. They're just showing their true colors." My husband and I discussed possibly moving since my family knows our current address. Our lease wasn't up for another 6 months, but we started looking at other apartments in different neighborhoods. Several friends offered their homes as temporary refuges if the harassment continued or we felt unsafe. I also consulted with a lawyer about the possibility of a restraining order. She advised documenting all contact attempts and said we might have grounds for harassment charges if their behavior continued or escalated. I started keeping a detailed log of every call, email, text, and visit, just in case. My husband worried about the toll this was taking on me. I wasn't sleeping well and had lost weight from stress. He suggested we take a weekend away to clear our heads, so we booked a small cabin in the mountains about 2 hours from our city. The break from constant vigilance was exactly what we needed. Update 3, it's been 2 weeks since my last update. Many of you suggested installing security cameras, which we did after my parents showed up unannounced for the 3rd time. We got a video doorbell for the front door and a small camera for the hallway outside our apartment. Our landlord approved the installation after we explained the situation. The cameras proved useful almost immediately. My mother showed up the day after installation, pressing the doorbell repeatedly and then shouting through the door when we didn't answer. The whole thing was captured on video, including her threats to call the police if I didn't stop this nonsense and talk to your family like an adult. My sister came by 2 days later with her husband, who looked uncomfortable to be there. She knocked more politely but then started taking pictures of our door and the hallway with her phone. When a neighbor asked what she was doing, she claimed to be worried about me and considering hiring a private investigator to check on my welfare. Our neighbor, who we had briefly explained the situation to, told her to leave or he would call building security. Yesterday, I received legal documents in the mail. My parents and sister are suing me, claiming I manipulated Grandpa Earl into changing his will through undue influence and fraudulent misrepresentation. They're asking the court to invalidate any changes to his will and to award them damages for emotional distress. I couldn't believe they would go this far. I immediately called Grandpa Earl, worried about how this stress would affect his health. To my surprise, he started laughing when I told him. Those delusional rats actually thought they could sue someone for their own awful behavior. "What a joke," he said. "I'm of sound mind, and no court will force me to give my money to anyone I don't want to. Don't worry." He explained that he had anticipated something like this might happen and had taken precautions. When he updated his will, he had his doctor perform a comprehensive cognitive assessment, which he passed with flying colors. He also had the signing witnessed by multiple people, including his lawyer and a notary. He documented his reasons for the changes, citing specific instances of my parents' and sister's behavior that concerned him. Grandpa Earl insisted on covering my legal expenses and had already contacted his attorney. When I spoke with the lawyer later that day, he confirmed they have essentially no case given Grandpa Earl's mental competence and documentation of his reasons for changing his will. These types of lawsuits rarely succeed unless there's clear evidence of diminished capacity or actual fraud, the lawyer explained. Your grandfather has been very thorough in protecting his wishes. I'm confident the case will be dismissed, though it might take some time to work through the legal process. The most hurtful part is the allegations in their lawsuit. They're portraying me as manipulative and money hungry when I've repeatedly told Grandpa Earl not to change his will on my account. They claim I isolated my grandfather from the family, when in reality, they rarely visited him even before this conflict. They accuse me of feeding him false information about them, when all I did was tell him exactly what happened with the wedding plans. It's clear projection, but it still hurts to see these accusations in legal documents. Reading through the lawsuit, I could see they were desperate and grasping at straws. They couldn't accept that Grandpa Earl made this decision himself based on their own actions. My husband suggested countersuing for harassment, but I just want this to be over. Grandpa Earl's lawyer believes the case will be dismissed quickly, so we're focusing on our defense rather than counterattacks. He advised us to continue documenting any contact attempts and to avoid engaging with them in any way that could be misconstrued. The day after receiving the lawsuit, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was my sister using a friend's phone. The message read, "You think you're so clever? Just wait until this all comes out in court. Everyone will see what you really are." I didn't respond and blocked that number too. We're currently preparing our response to the lawsuit with Grandpa Earl's lawyer. He's confident it will be resolved in our favor, but warns it could take several months. In the meantime, we're trying to maintain our normal routine as much as possible, though it's difficult with the constant stress hanging over us. Final update, the lawsuit against me was dismissed 3 months ago, just as Grandpa Earl's lawyer predicted. The judge didn't even let it proceed to a full trial, granting our motion for summary judgment after reviewing all the evidence. In her ruling, the judge specifically noted that my parents and sister failed to provide any credible evidence of undue influence or diminished capacity on Grandpa Earl's part. During the preliminary hearing, Grandpa Earl testified about their behavior and his reasons for changing his will. He was sharp, articulate, and clearly in full command of his faculties. The judge was particularly impressed by his detailed records of their interactions and the medical documentation of his cognitive health. My parents and sister spent a fortune on legal fees pursuing this baseless case. They hired an expensive attorney who apparently kept assuring them they had a strong position despite all evidence to the contrary. According to what we heard through mutual acquaintances, they were convinced they would not only invalidate the will changes but also receive substantial damages from me. The dismissal of the case came as a shock to them. Their attorney had apparently been stringing them along, collecting fees while knowing the case had little merit. They filed a complaint against him with the State Bar Association, but it was dismissed after review. 2 weeks after losing the case, my mother emailed claiming they had been scammed by their lawyer who promised them a guaranteed win. She said they had depleted their savings on legal fees and were now struggling financially. She asked if I could find it in my heart to help them, suggesting that since I was now set to inherit Grandpa Earl's money eventually, I could afford to be generous. I didn't respond. A few days later, my father called Grandpa Earl directly, asking for a loan until they got back on their feet. He blamed their financial troubles on bad legal advice rather than their own vindictive actions. When Grandpa Earl refused, my father said, "After all we've done for you over the years, this is how you repay us." Grandpa Earl told him, "If you contact me or my granddaughter again, the next legal action will be a restraining order." My father didn't take the threat seriously and called again the next day. This time, Grandpa Earl didn't answer, but had his lawyer send a cease and desist letter. After that, they finally stopped contacting him. My sister made one last attempt to reach me through a mutual friend. She sent a message saying she wanted to clear the air and repair our relationship. Our friend, who knew the whole story, asked if I wanted to respond. I declined, having learned that my sister's idea of repairing relationships usually involved me apologizing for things I hadn't done wrong. Since then, we've had peace. No more surprise visits, no more messages through friends, no more social media drama. They seem to have finally accepted that their actions have permanent consequences. Grandpa Earl's health has remained stable. I visit him weekly, and we've developed an even closer relationship. I guess that's it. Thanks for reading and helping, guys.